True authority does not come from crowns, symbols, or titles. It emerges from the way a man occupies space, observes his surroundings, and withstands the weight of his own silence without trembling. Most men try to appear strong by displaying force. A king doesn't need that, because his presence alone changes the air around him. The invisible throne is built in the minds of others long before it exists in circumstances. The ordinary man believes he needs permission to act with greatness, and that belief keeps him permanently small. He waits for recognition before adopting a firm posture, but that sequence condemns him to irrelevance. The king reverses the order. He acts as if he is already recognized, and the world adjusts to what he demonstrates. It is not arrogance, it is psychological strategy. There is a silent law in human behavior. Those who perceive themselves above are treated as such, not due to merit, but due to instinctive logic. People obey what they cannot easily decipher, and the man who walks with a solid internal structure is never treated as an equal. He does not compete, does not chase attention, does not ask for space. He simply occupies the center without announcing that he has done so. Real posture is not shown through aggression, but through implacable calm. Every servant exposes his condition through haste, through the anxiety of being noticed, through the childish urge to please. The king moves as someone who has nothing to prove, because he knows every slow gesture communicates dominance. The absence of urgency is a way to declare power without speaking. When a man enters a room trying to earn respect, he has already lost. The king does not try to earn it, he observes. He watches how others behave, how they distribute their gaze, how they react to his presence. What servants call shyness, he calls reading. He only acts after the territory is mapped, because acting too early is always the mistake of a subordinate. The invisible throne also appears in how a man responds to provocation. The servant answers quickly, tries to explain himself, adjusts his posture to avoid being misunderstood. The king does not justify himself. Explanation is the currency of the weak. He lets silence weigh on whoever tried to test him, because he knows the other person's discomfort works in his favor. The absence of reaction is more powerful than any sharp reply. The king's mind operates with calculated distance. He never becomes emotionally entangled in someone else's chaos, because he understands that excessive emotion gives away sovereignty. The man who governs himself prevents anyone from governing his expression, his tone, or his mood. This is the point at which the invisible throne becomes unshakable. No one can move a man who has learned not to be moved by anything. In the end, the illusion of the throne is illusion only to those who live as servants. To the king, it is simply the natural way of existing. He needs no external symbols because his authority is not in appearance, but in the internal structure that never wavers. The remaining question is simple. What have you been sustaining? A silent throne, or the servitude you pretend not to see? The servitude of the modern man does not appear through chains, but through emotional needs. He becomes a servant the moment he allows the opinions of others to shape his mood, his posture, and even his voice. The world doesn't need to command him. He bends on his own to avoid conflict or rejection. This silent self-submission destroys any possibility of real authority. The servant gives up his power every time he seeks approval before acting. He measures his words out of fear of sounding harsh, adjusting his behavior to fit fragile expectations. This psychological dependence does not come from kindness, but from insecurity. A man who fears losing acceptance becomes a predictable piece on the social board, easy to manipulate and even easier to ignore. Submission shows itself first in the body. The glance that shifts too quickly, the head that tilts slightly when hearing opinions, the body that shrinks to occupy less space. These micro-gestures reveal that he does not see himself as a central figure, but as someone trying not to disturb. The king reads these signs as weaknesses, understanding that a man who cannot control his body will never control the environment. The servant's voice is another instrument of surrender. He speaks quickly, tries to fill silences, and offers long explanations to avoid misunderstandings. The more he talks, the less authority he conveys. His haste exposes anxiety, and anxiety exposes fear. In the collective mind, fear is the mark of the dominated. The king understands this instinctively and uses each word like a scalpel, precise, cold, inevitable. Emotionally, the servant is predictable. Any criticism breaks him. Any provocation destabilizes him. Any harsh expression makes him retreat. He confuses peace with submission and avoids confrontation not out of strategy, but out of fear of showing firmness. This apparent gentleness makes him invisible, unable to influence or reshape the forces around him. His calm is not dominance, it is escape. There is also the servant who hides behind politeness. He offers help too often, agrees too quickly, smiles when he doesn't want to. His excessive cordiality is only fear dressed as virtue. Such men attract natural dominators because their weakness is obvious. The king, by contrast, does not hide behind good intentions. He acts with calculated neutrality and lets his boundaries speak for him. The servile mind creates illusions about power. It believes that being pleasant will generate respect and that unlimited flexibility will be rewarded. But the world does not operate by gratitude. It operates by psychological hierarchy. A man who bows too early is seen as inferior, even when he does not realize he bowed. Submission does not require someone to command. It only requires a lack of self-awareness. In the end, the psychology of the modern servant is forged by the need to be accepted. He lives to avoid displeasing others and dies without ever having been feared or respected. The final question is direct and uncomfortable. When someone observes you in silence, do they see a man who takes up space or a servant trying to be allowed? Distance is the first layer of power. It is not physical separation, but a psychological space that prevents others from accessing you easily. The man who exposes himself too much loses value, while the one who measures his presence creates an aura that cannot be touched without permission. Calculated distance is the invisible border that separates the king from those who try to treat him as an equal. The servant seeks closeness to feel safe. The king preserves distance to remain sovereign. This difference establishes hierarchy without any speech. When you withhold feelings, explanations, or urgency, people recognize that they must adjust to your rhythm. Distance forces everyone to try to decipher you, and the constant effort to read you is already a form of submission. Excessive emotional closeness is the root of most social manipulation. Those who open up too quickly become vulnerable to others' intentions. The king avoids this mistake by keeping his inner world inaccessible. He shares little, and when he speaks, he never reveals anything that could be used against him. This control turns any relationship into territory where he sets the limits without declaring them. Distance is also a test. A man with true silent strength does not fear losing connections when he remains reserved. He knows that anyone bothered by his silence reveals hidden motives or emotional dependency. By stepping back a few paces, the king observes who moves forward out of interest, who retreats out of fear, and who stays out of respect. Each reaction reveals more than any long conversation. In social environments, distance becomes even more strategic. A man who does not fully blend in creates presence without competing for attention. He does not chase groups, does not try to fit in, and does not battle for space with loud voices. Distance creates contrast, and contrast forces others to recognize him. The king does not stand out because he tries. He stands out because he remains unreachable. In communication, calculated distance appears in how you control your response time. The servant answers quickly to avoid seeming rude. The king responds when he decides it is the right moment, not out of arrogance, but because he understands that rhythm is a rule of power. The more predictable you are, the easier it is to manipulate you. Distance breaks predictability. In relationships, distance does not mean empty coldness. It means not handing over your emotional center as if it were cheap currency. The king has depth, but does not give that depth at the first touch. He observes the other person's consistency before allowing real closeness. This posture creates immediate respect because it shows that his inner world is not for sale. Calculated distance also prevents you from being absorbed by someone else's insecurity. When someone tries to pull you into impulsive arguments, emotional drama, or subtle manipulation, the king keeps his psychological space intact. He is not dragged into the center of the storm. He watches the storm spin until it loses strength. This strategic indifference is not coldness, it is high-level self-defense. In the end, maintaining distance is understanding that value lies not in access, but in the limitation of access. The man whom everyone can reach loses authority. The one whom few can reach becomes a reference. The question is inevitable. Do you control the distance, or do you let the world invade your territory without resistance? Controlling an environment does not mean commanding people, but commanding rhythms. The king does not arrive to be noticed. He arrives to notice. Before speaking, he studies the social temperature, identifies the invisible tensions, and recognizes who is competing for attention and who is merely seeking shelter. Dominance begins with the silent reading that comes before any movement, because acting without observing is wasting advantage. The servant enters a space trying to fit in, adjusting his posture to the climate that already exists. The king does the opposite. He keeps his own rhythm and forces others to reorganize around him. This subtle shift alters the hierarchy of the environment without requiring direct confrontation. Whoever dictates the rhythm dictates perception, and whoever dictates perception controls the territory. Physical space is also a weapon. A man who controls the environment chooses where to position himself, how he sits, and the distance between him and the others. Small decisions build the sense of silent authority. Sitting facing the door, choosing places with wide visibility, avoiding vulnerable points. All these gestures communicate that he is present and aware, even when he says nothing. Environmental control also appears in the way the king manages time. He does not rush, does not accelerate under external pressure, and does not react to the chaos others create. By keeping his inner tempo unchanged, he turns any room into an extension of his mind. The environment bends to him because his strategic calm is stronger than the urgencies around him. Whoever is not dragged by the pace of others inevitably assumes leadership. Speech is another point of command. The king does not speak to occupy space. He speaks to shape it. His words are measured and unhurried, with silences that force others to pay attention. The uncomfortable pause reveals who tries to fill the void and who can endure its weight. And those who cannot endure it quickly surrender their place in the psychological hierarchy. The environment always reorganizes around the one who controls silence. Control also manifests in micro-reactions. The servant moves too much, laughs out of nervousness, and tries to soften the atmosphere when he feels tension. The king remains steady. He lets silence mature, allows discomfort to reveal itself, and does not intervene to save anyone from themselves. This cold stability creates the impression that nothing surprises him, and that impression is more powerful than any display of physical force. In groups, the king never fights for leadership. He lets others speak, flare up, and show off. He observes everything with calculated distance and intervenes only when the intervention redirects the course of the situation. The environment responds to the man who intervenes rarely, but always at the precise moment. Low frequency, high impact. That combination defines sovereignty. Controlling the environment is not about manipulation, but about presence. The king shapes the space because he does not dissolve into it. He keeps his form intact, his mind cold, and his boundaries clear. Servants adapt to the environment. Kings reshape it with their mere existence. And the final question is unavoidable. When you walk into a place, does the environment change? Or did just another man walk in? Words are the currency of power, and those who spend too much reveal their own poverty. The servant speaks to fill silence, justify actions, or seek approval. The king speaks to establish direction. He understands that every sentence carries psychological weight, and that excess dilutes authority. When a man controls his voice, he also controls the way the world interprets him. Rushed speech exposes anxiety. It shows that the mind is trying to follow a rhythm the body cannot sustain. The king reverses this process. His speech comes from stability, not urgency. He does not compete for verbal space because he already possesses mental space. And when he finally speaks, his voice carries not only content, but command. The pause before each sentence is his true shield. Those who do not understand the economy of words reveal unnecessary emotion. They explain too much, open doors that should remain closed, and expose intentions that should stay concealed. This involuntary transparency is not a virtue. It is strategic weakness. The king knows that speech is an involuntary confession, which is why he limits what he confesses. He allows others to remain in doubt, because doubt is silent submission. The economy of words also creates mystery. While ordinary men rush to be understood, the king has no such childish need. He knows that too much clarity breeds familiarity, and familiarity destroys reverence. His communication contains only what is essential, and the essential is enough. Those who wish to understand may observe. Those who do not understand may reflect. He never makes the game easier for anyone. In confrontation, verbal economy becomes even more lethal. The servant tries to defend himself by explaining, justifying, or softening his stance. Each word of this defense lowers his position. The king refuses to play that game. He replies with short, dense, calculated lines. Sometimes he does not reply at all, and silence weighs more than any argument. People fear what they cannot predict, and the absence of speech creates that unstable terrain. The construction of vocal authority requires emotional discipline. Choosing not to speak when the ego wants to react is an advanced form of internal domination. The king knows his impulses but is not guided by them. He chooses each word as a general chooses each movement, evaluating impact, timing, and consequence. Words must resolve, not complicate. They must assert, not beg. They must set boundaries, not open weaknesses. In daily life, this economy turns ordinary interactions into displays of silent power. In meetings, the king listens more than he speaks. He lets others reveal their inconsistencies, expose their weaknesses, and confess their desires. When he speaks, his sentences close cycles rather than extend debates. In personal relationships, he avoids empty promises, excessive explanations, and conversations that add nothing. He does not waste verbal energy on those who do not deserve his time. The economy of words is not muteness, it is precision. The king chooses the right sentence at the right moment, with the right weight. He understands that speaking less forces others to think more, and those who think more inevitably bow to the one who made them think. In the end, the equation is simple. The servant speaks to be noticed, the king speaks to be obeyed. And the real question is this: do your words carry weight, or do they merely make noise? Posture reveals what the mouth tries to hide. A man may claim he is strong, but his body exposes every accumulated insecurity. The servant occupies space as if asking permission to exist. His shoulders collapse, his movements hesitate, his eyes search for confirmation. The king, however, moves with contained precision, as someone who knows that respect is not requested. It is imposed by the way he remains whole before the world. Restraint is the mark of the sovereign, not the restraint born from fear, but the one born from control. He does not gesture excessively, does not lean in to appear approachable, and does not soften his presence. His body speaks with silent firmness. Every movement is minimal and calculated because he understands that exaggeration is a symptom of insecurity. Physical stability creates a deep impression. Nothing shifts him, nothing forces him, nothing dominates him. The man who begs for respect tries constantly to appear reliable, understandable, and harmless. He worries about interpretations, adjusts his voice to avoid intimidating others, and tries to anticipate expectations. This plasticity diminishes him. The king operates in the opposite direction. He maintains a straight posture, steady gaze, and grounded stance. He does not alter his axis to make others comfortable. His consistency forces everyone around him to recalculate their positions. Breathing is also a tool of power. The servant breathes shallowly, trapped in the anxiety of pleasing or responding quickly. The king breathes slowly and deeply, as someone who has enough time and authority not to rush. This small difference transforms the psychological climate around him. His calm is not peace, it is hierarchy. Whoever controls their own breathing controls their own energy, and whoever controls energy dominates the atmosphere. The gaze is another point of rupture between servant and sovereign. The servant looks away, glances for fractions of a second, and searches for signs of acceptance. The king, on the other hand, looks directly and calmly, without aggression, but with firmness. There is no intention to intimidate. There is simply presence. He does not monitor the other. He reads him, and whoever is read feels, even without understanding why, that they have lost part of the control of the interaction. Movement reveals the same distinction. The servant fidgets, fixes his clothes, and fills the environment with restless energy. The king moves slowly, conserving energy, as someone who does not waste strength on nervous agitation. This calculated slowness creates a sense of weight, as if every gesture carried consequence. The body of the king does not announce insecurity, it announces command. The sovereign also understands the value of space. He does not shrink to appear smaller, nor expand to appear bigger. He simply exists with firmness. His body is not bravado, nor submission. It is boundary. Anyone who approaches him understands instinctively that there are invisible limits around him, and crossing them requires more than courage. It requires permission. The posture of a man who does not beg for respect does not come from theatrics, but from self-mastery. It is impossible to stage stability when it does not exist internally. That is why the king shapes his inner structure before shaping his image. Only after disciplining his impulses does he become capable of carrying a presence that asks for nothing. And the final question is unavoidable. Does your body communicate sovereignty, or merely the desperate desire to be accepted? Power dissolves the moment you become fully readable. The servant rushes to reveal thoughts, intentions, and weaknesses in an attempt to appear transparent, believing that such openness creates trust. But excess transparency does not bring people closer, it diminishes you. The king understands that mystery is not theatrics, it is strategy. He does not hand over his internal logic, allowing others to try to guess him without ever being able to claim they understand him completely. Predictability is a man's greatest vulnerability. Anyone who can observe fixed patterns can anticipate reactions, manipulate decisions, and exploit impulses. That is why the king cultivates a margin of controlled unpredictability. He acts coherently, but never obviously. He does not repeat automatic behaviors, does not respond with childish urgency, and does not react in the way others expect. This uncertainty forces everyone around him to treat him with caution, as if holding something they cannot measure. Mystery also comes from silence. The servant fills every space to avoid judgment, but the king leaves gaps. He understands that emptiness forces the other to fill it with imagination, and imagination always exaggerates. A silent man appears deeper than he truly is. An overly accessible man appears more ordinary than he wants to be. The king lets silence work on his behalf, creating an aura that words could never sustain. In social environments, unpredictability becomes a refined weapon. The king does not behave like a caricature of strength. Sometimes he observes, sometimes he intervenes, sometimes he withdraws before others understand why. He does not seek attention, but he does not repel it out of insecurity either. His rhythm does not follow the climate of the room tries to follow his rhythm. That freedom creates the perception of superiority, because only a man who owes nothing to anyone moves that way. In the emotional field, mystery prevents others from controlling the narrative. The servant reveals feelings to be comforted. The king reveals only what is useful to maintain direction. He does not allow anyone to know exactly what irritates him, what motivates him, or what weakens him. These pieces of information are keys to domination, and whoever hands over keys hands over territory. Emotional restraint is not coldness, it is armor. Unpredictability also protects the king from external expectations. When you are fully deciphered, people treat you like a tool. They know how to trigger your anger, how to feed your vanity, how to manipulate your need for acceptance. The king breaks this possibility by maintaining a layer of opacity. He does the unexpected only enough to break patterns, never enough to appear inconsistent. Coherence remains, but routine disappears. Mystery is reinforced by the life the king does not expose. He does not narrate every step, does not announce plans, and does not seek recognition for his achievements. He becomes a man of silent movements and visible results. This combination forces others to respect distance. When people do not know what you are doing, they assume you are doing more than you actually are. This psychological game tilts the balance without you needing to exert force. Maintaining mystery and unpredictability is not manipulation. It is preservation of inner power. The world tries to decipher men to control them, but it cannot control what it cannot understand. The final question remains like a blade. Do you reveal yourself out of necessity, or do you hide out of strategy? Indifference is not the absence of feeling. It is mastery over what deserves a reaction. The servant responds to everything: provocations, invitations, praise, criticism. He lives at the mercy of external stimuli, like a surface that vibrates at any touch. The king, on the other hand, chooses where he places his attention, and that choice is what defines his power. Reacting little is a silent declaration that nothing around him holds enough authority to move his inner structure. Most people mistake indifference for emotional coldness, but coldness is born from fear. Indifference is born from discipline. The king is not apathetic. He is selective. He knows that by not reacting, he forces the other person to confront their own discomfort. The absence of response is the purest form of control, because it transfers anxiety onto the one who tried to provoke him. The other's impatience reveals more than any long argument. In practice, controlled indifference works as a filter. The world constantly tries to pull your energy into useless conflicts, petty discussions, and childish comparisons. The servant gets involved because he believes he must defend himself. The king observes these traps without stepping into them. He responds only to what truly alters his path, ignoring the rest like someone closing a door that never needed to be opened. This selection creates focus, and focus is power. Provocation is the ultimate test. When someone tries to push you off balance, expose weakness, or measure your limits, your reaction defines your position in the psychological hierarchy. The servant reacts quickly, tries to prove himself, justifies, or gets agitated. The king keeps his gaze steady, breathes slowly, and lets silence do the work. The other person's inability to withstand that silence shows who truly lost control of the game. In social environments, indifference creates contrast. While others exaggerate, compete, or try to impress, the king remains centered. He does not need to display himself to be noticed. His stability stands out. People respect those who are not easily affected, because that stability suggests a well-structured inner life. His presence creates an invisible barrier. Everyone understands that his attention must be earned, not received out of pity. In the emotional realm, controlled indifference prevents you from being guided by the desire for approval. When you do not react to the lack of response, disinterest, or attempts at manipulation, the other person loses power over you. The king understands that desperate displays of interest are invitations to be tested. For this reason, he maintains an emotional distance that preserves his sovereignty. He cares, but he never depends. Indifference is also a weapon against chaos. People try to drag you into their internal storms to relieve their own insecurities. The servant enters the storm to save whoever pulls him. The king observes from outside, firm, knowing that another person's chaos cannot become his responsibility. He understands that each emotion absorbed without a filter is a loss of mental territory, and each loss diminishes his silent authority. In the end, controlled indifference is not about ignoring the world, but about preventing the world from invading your center. It is internal resistance, psychological discipline, strategic coldness. It is the certainty that nothing has power over you unless you allow it. And the final question is simple and uncomfortable. Do you react by choice, or because you still haven't learned not to? Real authority does not come from the strength you display, but from the strength you restrain. The servant tries to control the world because he does not control himself. His impulsiveness exposes him, and his instability reveals him. The king, however, governs his inner territory first, and this silent discipline is what turns his presence into command. Nothing is more intimidating than a man who governs himself in a world drifting without direction. Self-mastery is the foundation of every psychological hierarchy. When your emotions stop reacting automatically, you stop being manipulable. Anger, pride, desire, and fear cease to be masters and become tools. The king does not repress his instincts. He organizes them. He feels the fury but chooses the moment. He feels the desire but does not surrender. He feels the pain but does not collapse. Containment is his fortress. Most people live at war with their own chaos. They react before thinking, speak before understanding, and make decisions to relieve anxiety rather than to build position. This emotional haste creates unstable lives and poor choices. The king operates on a different rhythm. His mind is like a silent chamber where every impulse is examined before being allowed. He acts only when the action is inevitable and precise, never when it is merely an emotional release. Self-mastery also shapes the way the king faces conflict. While the servant enters battles driven by insecurity, the king only enters when it strengthens his position. He never fights for ego. He fights for psychological territory, and it is precisely this selectiveness that gives his presence impact. People know that when he speaks, when he acts, when he confronts, it is not emotion, it is a verdict. Internal discipline also appears in how the king manages boundaries. He allows no excess, neither from himself nor from others. His self-discipline prevents destructive habits, reduces distractions, and eliminates behaviors that erode authority. He understands that a man who does not control his routine, vices, impulses, and fragmented thoughts becomes a servant of his own mind. Self-mastery is liberation, but it is also a weapon. In social settings, this inner authority creates magnetism. People are drawn to those who remain solid when the environment collapses. The king's stability becomes a reference point for insecure minds. He becomes a center of gravity without asking, trying, or begging. He simply exists with consistency. In a world of emotional men, The one who remains intact is seen as superior, even when he says nothing. Self-mastery also defines how the king handles losses and victories. The servant becomes euphoric when he wins and shattered when he fails. The king treats both as phases of the game. He does not lose himself in victory, nor does he destroy himself in defeat. This emotional constancy prevents others from using his mental state as a weapon. No one commands a man who does not destabilize under praise or attack. In the end, the authority born from self-mastery is impenetrable because it does not depend on circumstances. It is built from the inside out, brick by brick, choice by choice. A man like this does not need to demand respect. His stability demands it for him. And the final question is unavoidable. Do you control your inner world, or does it still control every step you take? A king does not declare himself. He becomes inevitable. The invisible kingdom begins within and expands outward, quietly, until the environment recognizes his authority before it even understands its source. There is no coronation, no announcement, no witness. There is only a man who becomes more contained, more precise, more impenetrable. And this subtle transformation reshapes the hierarchy around him without a single theatrical gesture. The ritual of the invisible kingdom is sustained by consistency. It is not built on bursts of strength, but on silent habits, firm presence, calculated silence, emotional control, strategic distance. The combination of these elements forms a pattern that few can decipher. People begin to treat him as a reference because they sense he does not waver. In a world of volatile men, stability is interpreted as absolute power. This silent royalty also appears in the way the king chooses where to invest his energy. He does not waste vitality on small disputes, nor does he try to prove his worth to those who hold no weight. His movements are rare but definitive. He avoids social noise, abandons the need to be seen, and rejects ego battles. This selective control builds authority without visible effort, because each action reinforces that he lives above the urgency of others. The invisible king dominates without touching. His strength is recognized in the way he says no without raising his voice, and how that no never requires explanation. He refuses invitations that do not serve his path, keeps distance from people who drain energy, and avoids discussions that do not change his trajectory. His constant refusal to dissolve himself is what elevates him. He remains whole even when the world tries to fracture him. His presence creates a natural hierarchy. People speak to him differently, approach with caution, and wait for his opinion before positioning themselves. Not because he demands it, but because his posture communicates that he is guided by principles rather than impulses. This moral predictability combined with strategic unpredictability turns him into someone who cannot be treated like any other man. In the invisible kingdom, respect appears without being requested. He does not try to convince, seduce, or impress. He simply demonstrates in silence that he possesses clear boundaries, a sharp mind, and disciplined emotions. Life tests him, people challenge him, circumstances try to provoke him, and he remains unmoved. That continuity turns him into something rare, a man whose presence creates order. Those who live in chaos inevitably align themselves to his rhythm. In the end, the ritual has no conclusion. A king does not reach the throne, he sustains it. Every day, in the way he thinks, reacts, walks, and observes, he reaffirms his internal dominion and, as a consequence, his external dominion. He knows that the strongest form of power is the one that does not need to be stated, only perceived. And the final provocation is sharp as steel. Have you built a kingdom within yourself? Or are you still waiting for someone to hand you a throne?